Good morning, everyone. Glad to be back here. We have another full day ahead of us. We're going to start the morning hearing from our taxpayer advocate and a few other stakeholders who think more about how taxes, like the actual administration of taxes, works for people. So that's another angle we're going to take. And then we're going to have a 101 on corporate income taxes, which we did a lot of work on last year, and an update on how that's going. And then we are going to tackle our first bill with an incredible stack of witnesses, and then lunch, and then a common level of appraisal, and then it's going to be a great day. So Jeff, if you want to come up and join us and start us off, thanks.
Hello, my name is Jeff Dooley. I am the taxpayer advocate for the Vermont Department of Taxes.
Thanks for joining us. I'd love for us all to go around and introduce ourselves to you because we have some new members here. So hi, I'm Emily Kornheiser, chair of the committee.
Bill Canfield.
Julia Andrews.
Kevin Sims.
Scott Beck.
Kirk Taylor.
Peter Anthony.
Carolyn Brannigan. And didn't you have another job before that?
I did. I've been at the Department of Taxes for a little over 12 years. I was a lead tax policy analyst prior to this.
That's right. I remember crying to you many times. Save me.
I'm Carol Odie.
Carl Demerol.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you. We're a little bit before my taxpayer advocate report is due. That'll be coming in the next couple of days. I can give you a little bit of a preview of what that's going to look like. But just to give the committee a kind of overview of my position and what I do at the department is this position was created in 2001 and then codified in the law. And essentially, to go through a little bit of what the law says. The job of the taxpayer advocate is to identify subject areas where taxpayers have difficulties interacting with the department, identify classes of taxpayers or specific business sectors who have common problems, proposing solutions, including administrative and legislative proposals, educating taxpayers, educating tax professionals, assisting individual taxpayers when situations go off the rails, and presenting to this committee. So basically, the way I look at my position is I see it as having a macro and a micro duties. On the macro level, I try to be the voice of the taxpayer in the room for the Department of Taxes. So whenever the department is proposing any new initiative or new program, I try to look at how it will affect taxpayers and bring that perspective into the discussion. And I also look to see where there are instances where the way the tax department's administrative policies are affecting taxpayers in a negative way, or the way that the tax statutes in Vermont are impacting taxpayers in a negative way. So that's kind of the macro level. And then on a micro level, whenever an individual is interacting with the department and that goes off the rails for whatever reason, they're not getting a response or they feel they're being treated unfairly, they can come to me and I can look into their situation and try to find a resolution. There's also specifically in law a process called extraordinary relief, where if the letter of the law applies to someone in a way that's unfair or unforeseen or is going to create a significant financial hardship for an individual taxpayer, I can look into their case, present that to the commissioner, and then he can use his powers to approve or deny their request to go around the letter of the law to help those individual taxpayers. So that's kind of my role in the department. I've been in this role for a little over 6 years. And I've been working with this committee to, in my opinion, great success. I've had a lot of proposals over the years, and most of them have been put into law, so I'm greatly appreciative of that. I don't have too many new proposals this year. The only main one that I have is around the property tax credit. That is where I do most of my work, because that's where most of the taxpayers who I come across are affected because of the strict October 15th deadline. So my proposal this year is to extend the deadline for property tax credit to March 15th of the following year, of the current due date. And if any of those property tax credit claims come in between October 15th and March 15th of the following year, we would issue a property tax credit directly to the taxpayer with a slight penalty, $150 penalty. Again, that would go directly to the taxpayer. The town wouldn't be involved, so Grand List wouldn't be affected. And so that is my main legislative proposal for this year. Before I get into anything else, I'll open it up to if anyone has any questions about my general role or about that particular proposal.
I'm curious to hear more about sort of who tends to come to you and how they find their way to you.
Well, we do have my name and phone number and email address on the website, and we've tried to get the word out to our staff that if someone does fall into this position and seems to be in a hard situation, that they should contact me. So generally, either that's how someone comes across my name and number, is either through the website or they're referred to me by someone else in the department. We do also have, we do partner with towns and legal aid and other places who are aware of my role and will refer people to me. The vast majority of people who come to me, like I said, are people who are having issues with their property tax credit. I think I actually have some numbers. In the last year, I think we had approximately 45 cases of extraordinary relief, and about 40 of those were property tax credit claims for people who missed the deadline. And so by and large, the population that comes to me.
Yeah, Representative.
Thank you. I remember hearing about that last year, and I wonder, would now be a time to ask for more detail about that, or?
Sure, I mean, I think it's probably gonna be in some bill that comes before us, like miscellaneous tax, but.
Okay, then I can wait.
Well, I actually don't believe that will be in
Okay.
miscellaneous tax bill. So
Add it for miscellaneous tax bill, so let's ask.
All right.
So by all means.
Well, I'd like to hear like an example of one taxpayer and how it played out for them. And then, since it might be in the miscellaneous tax bill, would you have language that you could propose to us?
I do, and there will be language in the taxpayer advocate report when it comes out. But it's as simple as someone who's filling out their personal income tax return through TurboTax, and they click the wrong box when they're going through TurboTax, walking them through the process of were you domiciled the entire year in Vermont or something like that. And so their property, their homestead declaration and property tax credit doesn't get to the state of Vermont. And, you know, that's someone whose only income is Social Security. So they're making, you know, $15,000 in income a year, and all of a sudden they're not getting their $3,000 property tax credit, and they don't learn that until they're mortgage company contacts them and says, oh, by the way, your mortgage is going up $500 a month. And there's absolutely no way they can pay that. And they call me panicked and, worrying that they're going to have their house foreclosed upon. I actually had someone between Christmas and New Year's of this year call me up flustered, and then I looked at their situation and let them know, like, oh, it looks like based on your income level, you're probably eligible for extraordinary relief. And the person was very thankful and said, well, that's the best gift I've gotten all year, and I haven't eaten in 3 days because I've been so worried about this. And I mean, that's kind of the real world impact that it has on these individuals when they find out that they're not getting this or they think they're not getting this property tax credit, and they may be kicked out of their home.
Wow, thank you.
And again, just to sort of build on the solution that you're offering, what I think I understand you saying is right now there's a window by which you have to file that homestead declaration. That's October 15th, and your proposal would be to extend that all the way to March 15th. So there's more time for people to, once the error has been identified, go back and correct it, pay a small fee, but not lose out on that.
Correct.
That they actually are entitled to because they checked the wrong box.
Yeah, they checked the wrong box, or yeah, they didn't realize they didn't fill out the form. And the reason March 15th, I usually, almost all the requests I get come in before that date, and the reasons are fairly clear. I mean, for some towns, taxes aren't due until November or October, and so people don't even look at their bills until then to realize that they haven't received their property tax credit. Some people don't look at their property tax bills at all because they just figure that their mortgage company is paying that through their escrow, so they don't realize until the middle of January when their mortgage company contacts them and says, oh, by the way, for 2023, your mortgage is now $300 more than it was the year before. And then it takes them a week to figure out what happened and why their mortgage went up that much. And then they contact me. But so for a lot of the individuals who end up on my desk, they just don't realize.
And so just sort of two follow-up questions. I mean, I can validate, I am dealing with a situation with a constituent right now who didn't realize until her mortgage went up, or payments up dramatically, and has had to make really tough choices about food and fuel as a result. So what's the window for extraordinary circumstances relief?
Extraordinary relief, they can come to me at any time, really. But I mean, realistically,
Probably not for 5 years ago.
no, I mean, it's up to the commissioner's discretion, and Commissioner Bolio generally is willing to look back a year. And in really extraordinary circumstances where there's like health issues, dementia or something like that, that he would go back more than 1 year. But general rule of thumb, I would say, as long as you get to me within a year of finding out that your mortgage went up.
And building on the chair's question around just how you spread the word about you as a resource, I'm curious whether, in addition to sort of putting it on the website, are you partnering with like capstone agencies or legal aid or sort of other partners who folks might think of first to go to for help to make sure that they know that you're a resource that individuals can be referred to?
Well, I've definitely had a lot of discussions with legal aid over the last year, and so they're aware I exist, and I try to get the word out to preparers and other agencies, but there isn't a formal partnership, I would say.
Representative Brannigan?
Thank you. So I'm very sympathetic to this circumstance that you described. And I've had people in my constituency who fit that bill exactly. But what happens to everybody else when this happens? When these folks don't pay the amount the state says is due, and everybody else does. So the town and the school end up with a shortfall. of whatever amount these people should have paid in. Even if it's a small shortfall, somebody's got to pick up that difference. So in my town, we borrow money from the 1st of January until October when taxes are due. So we're paying back the money we borrowed and we're finishing up our expenditures, our amounts due from October until the end of the year. So what happens to that money that remains unpaid now until April of the next year? How does this town get that? Because the town and the school district were counting on that money to make ends meet.
I'm not 100% sure I understand the question, but so in circumstances where we pay the person through extraordinary relief, they would still owe the money to the town and pay the money to the town. It's just the money would go from the state to the individual, and the individual would pay the town rather than the state paying the town directly. So in theory, the town should be whole either way.
But not until the next April.
No, it would still, the town could still collect from the taxpayer. It's just that a check would go to the taxpayer. If extraordinary relief was approved today for a taxpayer, once that paperwork got processed, the check would go to the taxpayer within the next week. And then the taxpayer would pay the town still for that year. So in theory, the town should not be any worse off in any event, because the money is still going to the town. It's just going through the taxpayer rather than through the state.
And as long as the town gets the money by the end of the year, everything will be fine. But if they have to wait until the next fiscal year, we're on a calendar year. And so and this may only be one town. If it's just one town, we need to forget it, because I've been telling them they ought to be on a fiscal year for years. Right now, they're on a calendar year. So if they don't get that money until April of the next year, they're going to show a shortfall on the town report.
Well, I mean, it effectively would be the same as any taxpayer not paying their property taxes, but in theory, where the taxpayer should still be working with the town to pay their taxes. We're just trying to make the taxpayer whole.
You mean it would show up as a delinquent tax?
Yeah,
Right, yes.
they carry those for years.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So in theory, the taxpayer normally owes $5,000, and let's say $3,000 gets paid by the state prior to the first tax bill going out. The person doesn't pay. It shows up on the taxes ledger as a person owing the full $5,000. The taxpayer can either pay the amount due when it's due or be delinquent. But as it's currently, the current situation is when we would process the extraordinary relief claim, the taxpayer would get a check and then work out with the town getting current. But in theory, this shouldn't change any of the dynamic between the town and the taxpayer. I mean, the town, in theory, might not have that money till later because the taxpayer doesn't have that money till later. But that would be the same situation as if the taxpayer owes that $2,000 and doesn't pay it when it's due in October or November or whenever.
Right. Most of those are actually cleared up by town meeting day in my town, because nobody wants their name on the book.
Right, and that's,
Yep.
and my proposal to extend it to March 15th is being a bit overly broad. I think most people who come to me are between November and the middle of January, because that's when they become aware of that. And so actually, in theory, this proposal should get the town money quicker because they don't have to submit a letter and the forms to me. And then I have dozens of these to go through. And so it takes 4 to 6 weeks for me to review something, get it to the commissioner, have the commissioner approve it, send it down to our taxpayer services unit, have them process it. Under my proposal, they would just submit it as soon as they figure out that they missed the deadline, and our taxpayer services unit will process that, and that check will go out the door within a week. And so in theory, the towns should actually get their money 4 to 6 weeks sooner than they do under the current extraordinary relief
I can
process.
see that, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Representative Anthony, and then let's move on from this agenda item until we have language in front of us.
Thank you. From the description you gave at your introduction of the portfolio of interests, what I'm about to describe is not a whoops, but intentional. It intersects a segment of the business community, it intersects the property credit. And it's the following. Many small businesses are proprietorships. They file a household income declaration like any individual homesteader. For reasons that are obscure to me, there's a purposeful disallowance of any losses. In other words, when you fill that out, you put in your business income only if it's greater than 0. This was revealed to me during COVID when several people, including especially proprietors, had a bad year. They had losses. Unfortunately, those did not allow them to qualify for the property tax credit because it's either 0 or it's a plus number. I think that's unfortunate and it's discriminatory. Thank you.
Before you leave the chair, I'm just curious if you have ever spent any time engaging with sort of broader access to tax filing. I think as we added the child tax credit and we've increased the earned income tax credit, I'm just curious about your thoughts, and you don't have to answer me now, you can come back, but just on proposals to make sure that more Vermonters are aware of the benefits of filing and the ease of filing.
It's definitely something we've thought of, and I've had conversations with Legal Aid in the recent weeks about this. It's difficult. We do try to identify individuals who are eligible for the property tax credit who haven't filed, but most of that is based on prior year filings. So I think more of the population that you're speaking to is the population that doesn't necessarily have a personal income tax filing requirement, and frankly, that's a difficult population to find and reach. We put things on our website and our social media, but the general public, I don't think, is generally going to the Vermont Department of Taxes website and social media outlets on a consistent basis. And we put out a press release every year. I think one media outlet picked it up, which was like the state tax notes, which again, I don't think lower income people are generally engaged with. So
Anyone.
outside of,
Sorry, I've never heard either.
it's very popular within our department, but outside of that, I don't know. But yeah, so it's difficult, and we definitely we have a communications team in the department, and we would be open to any ideas. And I think legal aid does have some ideas on how to reach some individuals, but I do think if there was a way to educate the public more on what's available to them and whether it's the property tax credit, the renter rebate, because we know for a fact that the renter rebate, or I guess the renter credit now, is underutilized. Yeah, if we could reach that population.
I would really appreciate if you could think about it more and come back to us with a greater proposal. And I think this is what we're going to talk about for the rest of the half hour with the other folks who are coming up to the table. So you're welcome to ask a question now.
I'm willing to ask a question, but I would be very interested in meeting with you and others. I am working on the idea of financial literacy for the public, kind of birth to cradle to death, whatever. And I think that there are some neat ideas that we could maybe work with kids even when they're in high school and filing their first tax return and understanding what that means and how great it can be with IRAs and things like that. So I would love to meet with you and others about it.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think next up, we have Paul Dragon from CVOEO.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, and are you and Liz doing this together or?
Yes, I'll be
taking turns?
joined with my colleague, Liz Scharf as well. So I just wanted to thank everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee members. For the record, my name is Paul Dragon. I'm the Executive Director of the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, also called CVOEO. And I am joined here with my colleague Liz Scharf from Capstone. CVOEO and Capstone are two of the 5 community action agencies in Vermont, and we together do the Vermont Income.
Oh, your sound just went away, but maybe while we're working on that, Liz could introduce herself.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Morning. I'm Liz Scharf. I'm the Director of Community Economic Development and Food Security at Capstone Community Action. And I'm also a volunteer income tax assistance volunteer for the last 8 years and a financial counselor who works on financial literacy for the community action agencies.
Thanks so much for coming. Do you want to try speaking again?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, your sound's back. Great.
Okay, thanks. Yes, so very glad to be here. Liz and I will be doing this together. The purpose, as I understood it, I want to talk a little bit about the Vermont Income Tax Assistance Program, which is the VITA program. I want to include some data from last year, along with some opportunities and challenges. We also want to discuss the use of targeted refundable tax credits, including the Earned Income Tax Credit, or the EITC, and the Child Tax Credit. And Liz will specifically be talking more about the Child Tax Credit. And a caveat, Liz is an expert in this. I am not, so we will handle questions together, and I'll lean on Liz for answering many other questions, I'm sure. So first of all, the Vermont Community Action Partnership. These are 5 community action agencies. I think you have the slide deck. I'm not going to just quickly cover this. We cover 100% of the Vermont towns, municipalities, and all the people in Vermont, the 5 community action agencies. We do everything from emergent services to long-term solutions to get people out of homelessness, so out of poverty. So we do homeless services, food access services. We also do micro business, personal financing, weatherization, Head Start, and you can see some comments on the slide from the people that we work with. The main point is that we really try hard to understand our communities and connect people with our programs and services and the benefits that they deserve and are eligible for through the state. So the VITA program, we offer free tax preparation to people who are income eligible. One of our focuses, as well as persons with disabilities and limited English speaking taxpayers who need assistance with preparing their tax returns. This past year, the income eligibility was $57,000 a year. That is going up to $60,000 this year. We start our season February 1st and we end April 15th. And we focus on the hardest to reach urban and rural areas, especially trying to focus on reaching folks in rural areas. And again, individuals with disabilities has been one of our focuses as a collection of community action agencies. And for CVOEO here in Chittenden County, really focusing on new Americans as well has been one of the areas of one of the populations that we've been strongly outreaching to. So the need for a volunteer tax program and for the tax credits that we're going to be talking about, the need to us is pretty obvious, and I'm sure you know the data as well. Vermont has people living in poverty, and they have a high number of people who are living with low income. So you know that 68,000 people approximately and 29,000 households in Vermont are living in poverty. About 12.3% of children are living in poverty, and a really big number is a little over 30% of children under 12 live in households with incomes below 185% of poverty. And we see the discrepancy between the folks with the low incomes and then what it does take to live. And we know that the average reach-up benefit, some of our lowest income families in the state for a family of four is approximately $12,000 a year. We know that the federal poverty level, again, very outdated, not even used as a measurement of need. It's really a gauge of what you need for more government benefits is very low at $27,000 for a family of four. And we know that the minimum wage here in Vermont is $52,000. And then you can see that a living wage, according to MIT, which is probably the deepest study that we've had, is $107,000 approximately for a family of four in Vermont. So the need for a volunteer income tax program is to really get people back the money that they are eligible for. That's the most important thing about it. In offering free tax assistance, the cost, as you probably know, is maybe $150, $200, $250 to do tax preparation. We do it for free, so that's also a benefit. And we estimate that just in Chittenden County, we saved $100,000 for the people that we served by offering free tax assistance. On one of the slides, you're going to see a table of the number of people we served. This year, it was 3,869. It was a decrease. I'll talk a little bit about that from returns last year. Most of the returns are e-filed, which is great, about 98%. Those that aren't, they're usually due to errors, and we have to file them with paper filing, but most of it is e-file. You can see that we served a little over 700 people, individuals with disabilities. Again, that's a focus, and that was up last year, which is good. The average refund amount was $1,610. The average EITC amount was $1,188. We do rely a lot on volunteers today. We have 40 volunteers over at Champlain College with our tax coordinator. It's the kickoff for a 2-day training. So 48 is a good number. We do rely on volunteers to get this work done. So it's super important for us to really focus on quality. We do a lot of training and certification. All our volunteers are IRS certified. Liz is, and Liz can talk more about that. We have the IRS approved interview intake sheet and quality review checklist. So we really focus on accuracy and quality reviews. We have a very, very low error rate that we're really, really proud of. It's around 4%. And the brunt of that is due to mistakes that people have made or misinformation that they have given us. So we're really proud of the work that's done. And it is done with community members, Vermonters from all over the state.
Liz and Paul, I don't know who's the better person to answer this question, but I know you're from two separate community actions, and there are a number of other community actions around the state. Do you think you have consistent coverage and service throughout the state? And that's I assume the answer is no, so I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, the answer is no, and we're working on that. And in the last year's budget, the legislature funded 5 full-time positions for VITA, one at each of the community action agencies. The other three community action agencies, BROC, SEPCA, and NECA, have been historically have very small programs with one volunteer, and in many cases, especially the Northeast Kingdom, this is where we need it the most. So we have just this past year in August in 2022 hired full-time people to start building up this the VITA program on a statewide level. And we were super excited. We advocated really hard for this full-time position because it really is a full-time position. It's all year round at our agency that we're working with folks from around the state who have troubles with the IRS and their property tax. I will talk briefly about that problem as well, because that's a huge problem.
And so do you feel like you have what you need now?
Right now, we are doing well, yes, and we want to continue to have that. So this was one-time funding for the VITA program, and we'd like to see that continue on a regular basis so that we can grow this program in these areas that historically have not been able to provide this service.
I can't tell you how thankful.
Can I just, maybe just would love to hear a little bit more about what those strategies are to, I imagine each community maybe has unique challenges and, so here the capacity, having a person is really important. Do you have a sense of what that person can do to especially address our most underserved, high poverty regions?
Right. So that's a great question because it is, as you know, especially with COVID, it's been a struggle to find volunteers for anything, right? It's a struggle to find workers, let alone volunteers. As CDOEO and Capstone, we're really lucky that we've had programs that we've built over time. So we have dedicated volunteers who return year after year. And so we at Capstone in particular are working with the other community action agencies for strategies to get volunteers and keep volunteers and how to get the word out about the VITA program, especially in those areas where they haven't. We have at CDOEO and Capstone, we have, we're not turning anyone away, but the phones are ringing off the hook day in and day out to make appointments. And so we are just constantly 60 hours a week doing taxes. So what we want to see is that same level of commitment in the other agencies. And now that we have full-time people, we're really looking, and it's not going to happen in 1 year. It really takes time to build these programs. So I'm hoping that, in year 2, provided we get funding for it, that we're able to use lessons learned from this year on how to get volunteers and continue to build that volunteer base so that we can do as many taxes as CDOEO and Capstone do. Basically double what we do right now.
Yeah.
My question, I think, was for Paul, which is, I live in sort of rural Chittenden County. So my question is, for my constituents, do they need to travel to Burlington in order to have an appointment with a tax person?
Yeah, right now we do have a donated space and we've had it for the past 3 years at the U Mall, which is wonderful. It's a great big space, but people can also go into our Addison County or Franklin Grand Isle office as well. And I just want to reiterate what Liz was saying. It is so important because the challenges of a part-time program, starting in mid-January and building up through April, really, really difficult to organize volunteers. Now with a full-time coordinator year-round, we can have them certified, first of all, at a higher level, and we can build volunteer networks. We can analyze data from town to town, and we can target towns and different populations. So I think we're going to see much, much more outreach with the full-time coordinators.
Oh, sorry, Representative Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul, Liz, thanks for being here today and sharing this with us. I just wanted to confirm that the number for 2021, the 3,869, that's statewide, is that correct?
That's
okay.
Correct. Yes.
That's primarily between CDOEO and Capstone because last year the programs really didn't have, because they weren't funded, they just had very small, they did maybe, anywhere from 0 tax returns, I think in NECA, and it's just a handful.
I just searched the site and they don't even pop up.
Yeah,
The site.
and that's good to know. We can, there's a new person there that just got hired to do that work. And so the bulk of those taxes were done by CBOEO and Capstone, Chittenden and Washington counties.
It's an impressive number, and just looking at your average refund amount, I mean, you could multiply that by the number of returns that you did and come up with a number in the $1 million figure. I think it would be great to find some way to quantify the amount of money that you're getting.
I think I have that here. For 2022, well, actually, this was just the EITC. Well, for 2022, for the expanded child tax credit, the state gave out $1,550,000 in the expanded child tax credit, and for EITC, it's almost $700,000.
Is that for folks whose returns you did?
Yeah, for the state, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's just fantastic.
And those are really, if I don't mean to interrupt your presentation, Paul.
No, it's good.
Yeah, no, I was going to say for the child tax credit, I did want to highlight and thank the legislature for implementing the child tax credit for Vermont. So as you recall, when the pandemic hit and the American Rescue Plan had given this expanded child tax credit to everyone who had children, up to a certain income. And it was anywhere from $3,000 per child or $3,600 per child based on the age of the child. What made that tax credit significantly different from child tax credits in the past is that families who did not have earned income or who were on disability were eligible for this credit. So for the first time ever, they were getting money every month from July through December 2021 that were helping their family. And then in the second half of the year, folks who had never filed taxes. So in 2022, we had people, calling us and asking us, how do I get this money? Because they'd never filed taxes before. So we were helping them get the second half of their credit, which they could only do if they filed taxes. And so, there was a study done by the Brookings Institution that studied these families who got this expanded child tax credit. And they found that families, and in particular, Black and minority and Hispanic families and low-income families, spent it on basic necessities, bills, and food. And that they saw increased nutrition when they got this child tax credit. And I will also tell you, based on our data for our food shelf, that in 2022, well, really 2021, we saw a decrease in the people using our food shelf, a 40% decrease in the people using our food shelf. Why? Because they had money and they spent it on the things that they needed. In 2022, we saw a 38% increase of people using our food shelf. And most disturbingly, we saw a 50% increase in the number of children served at our food shelf, okay? And that's because that money was no longer there. So first, I want to say thank you for the extra $1,000 because it's not just the people in the room here who have kids 5 and under who are going to get it. It's people who are on Reach Up, who have no earned income. And it's families with disabilities who are also going to be eligible for that $1,000. And they don't even know this, right? So that's our job at the community action agencies, is to work with these families and the Head Start families and to say, this is your time to file your taxes because you will get $1,000 from the state. You're not going to get anything else, or maybe you're going to get, a little bit of money. Let me say one more little statistic. Yeah. Okay. I'll give you an example of a low income person. This is someone that would work at Capstone. They might make $2,800 in last year, right? Doing some job for a couple months. Then they go on Reach Up. They've got one kid under the age of 4. Do you want to know how much their child tax credit this year is? Guess. $45. That's what they're getting in the federal child tax credit for that $2,800. They're getting a great EIC. They're getting $916 in an earned income tax credit, but they are only getting $45. What did they get last year? $3,600, right? So this is, and again, I want to back up to say, they're not taxpayers, right? They're not paying taxes. Let's just put that out on the table. They don't owe the government anything because they don't make enough money to pay taxes. But the fact is, when they get these credits, these child tax credits, we're bridging that wealth divide in the tax code because the families like me who go out and buy the electric car and get the $7,500 credit and have 2 kids and get the $4,000 credit and put money in my 529, my tax liability might end up only being $3,000 because I get all these credits. And how is that fair to the families that have zero, they have no money, they live in poverty, right? But this extra money helps them get out of poverty. Yes.
I just want to be sure for people listening, is everybody does pay taxes. They're paying sales tax.
Yes,
they're paying
right.
their rents.
The regressive tax, yes, they are paying.
Rent has
property tax.
Property tax is a part of it. So I think all of us, all in, everyone who's a Vermonter, who's living in Vermont is paying taxes. It's just in the particular income
Yes.
tax is the one that isn't, they're not in that equation, but want to be, I'm sure.
Yes.
People. And so, we have many ways to help. One of the ways is through the tax law. Another is through, training and education and everything else.
Thank you for making that point that everyone who's.
That's true, yes.
One way or another, that's really helpful. I just want to sort of agenda switching announcements so no one feels rushed or frantic if they're looking at the agenda too closely, especially the folks on the bench from Legal Aid. We're going to move the corporate income tax primer to tomorrow, so we have a little more time to have this as an expansive conversation. Because Paul, I don't even know how far you got in your presentation before I interrupted you, but it was not.
Before I
No, I interrupted.
We were doing this together. I'll just say, to reiterate Liz's point, we all know that the EITC and the CTC are very powerful anti-poverty tools. They're also popular. We put in some other tax equity ideas that I know you all know about. And these 2 tools are really, really, really powerful. And I applaud the legislature, not only for, adding on the VITA coordinators, which is going to dramatically expand our network over the next few years, but also you work on the match in Vermont, the federal match for the EITC. I think that is super important. We have a good take-up rate in Vermont. 83% folks get the EITC. We're like 3rd in the nation. That's great. We still have 17% of the people, though, are not taking advantage of that. I enjoyed the conversation with our tax advocate, and figuring out how to get the word out is going to be really important. And I think really reaching those folks who aren't filing because of low income is really, really important. My understanding that, and this may not be true anymore, but I thought the TANF block grant contributed to the state portion of the EITC. And so it's really important. TANF is the program that funds our Reach Up program. So it's really important that we also make sure that we're getting money to the lowest income people, Head Start parents at 138% of the poverty, Reach Up parents, and so forth.
Do you have more of your presentation that you wanted to?
Well, I think, Liz, we kind of, that's where we're at. We're super grateful to the legislature. We're going to build our networks out. Yes, the Northeast Kingdom in particular is an area of growth for getting volunteers and doing work. And just thank you so much for all your support.
Absolutely. Really grateful for the work that you all do.
And may I make one more comment in touching on what Jeff had mentioned on the property tax adjustment. We get a lot of the people that come to the volunteer income tax assistance program are coming to do their property tax adjustment. So they're retired individuals on very fixed income, Social Security. And one of the problems that we as volunteers, so in the volunteer income tax assistance process, you have the volunteer do the taxes, and then you also have somebody who quality reviews the taxes. So there's 2 people literally doing, it's almost like they're doing the taxes twice, right? But we're also dealing with, at Capstone, 2,000 taxes, right? So it gets busy, right? And one of the problems that we have found in our errors is around the property tax. And it has to do with exactly what Jeff said. The IRS is famous for double negatives. If you've ever trained on the IRS, it's the way you have to read things is like, what are they asking me, right? So one of the things in the tax layer, which is what VITA uses is as our tax filing system, is were you domiciled in Vermont all year round? And you are in the section about I want to claim a property tax, and it defaults to no. And I worked with TaxSlayer over the summer, and I was like, please please, can you change this to default to yes? Because I wouldn't be here otherwise. I wouldn't be in this section otherwise. Because it's a problem and we are missing it. Because it defaults to no and you have to check that button. And if you don't check that button, it looks like you filed it, the state never gets it. And then they call us, frantic. I got my tax bill, there's no credit on it. And we have to help them. And it was such a small request. And they came back, literally it was weeks I tried to work with them to try to get them to do something, a bubble pop up that reminds us, are you sure you weren't domiciled in Vermont all your, no. So it's still a problem, and it continues to be a problem. And so it would be great if we could extend the time frame so that people weren't, penalized to the extent that they are right now when they have, we have inadvertently, even in our quality review, missed it. It's not it's not like we're missing hundreds, but we are missing it. And it's a problem because it's the lowest income people who can least afford to pay their taxes.
Go ahead, Paul.
One more recommendation in addition to keeping the full-time VITA coordinators going is to think about how to capture or provide that benefit to the 17% of those folks. Let's not lose that and to folks who aren't filing because of low income. I don't know whether it's a committee, a study group, or somebody working with Jeff and the tax advocate. I do think that is a takeaway. Like that's money that's kind of left on the table. So how can we strengthen and broaden our use of the EITC, which we know really, really helps. So.
And I'll add to that, I think people are afraid to do their taxes. A lot of folks are really, they don't understand. No one, and I'll tell you this, no one knows what they're getting in their tax return. They don't know what a credit is. They don't know why they're getting this money. They don't understand that. And they're afraid, right? They're afraid of the IRS and they see the community action agencies as a trusted source and the tax advocates and legal aid as well, which I want to note that we do work with both of them. At the community action agencies, we work with the tax advocate when we have something we can't figure out. We refer people to legal aid all the time. I believe there is a strong partnership, but getting the word out about taxes and making people feel like it's a trusted source, the community action agencies really are that place. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I just want to offer that as we continue to work on the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, we had originally, the original bill had regular payments rather than a lump sum. And as I don't know how closely you followed it last year, but we decided to move to a lump sum because of impact on benefits. And I know that there is a little bit of federal movement on that. But if the community actions would like to jump into that conversation at the federal level, that would be really helpful because we're really restricted in what we can do here on that.
It would also be great if, thinking down the road, to expand this to the same ages as the federal child tax credit. It's great for the 5 and under, but kids that are older cost money too.
They do. They really
They eat
do.
more.
Yes. Thank you both so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So I'm going to pivot slightly on the agenda and we're actually going to take a break and then work with you all if that works for you. So